So next I'll just take you into a bit of a demo and show you the dashboard and how you could interact with it. So now you should be seeing this adoption dashboard in the analytics portal. Again, this is available in the Shoplogix templates folder. So you can go ahead and check out SLX templates. It'll be the one right at the top. And you just connect it to your data source and you'll be able to see this dashboard's immediately ready to use and analyze with your own production data. So just taking you on a bit of a tour through this, the first thing you'll see is that overall adoption score. Again, that average of all of the sub scores. You'll notice here we have a widget that looks at the overall adoption by plant. So it breaks out your individual adoption for each one of your plants. We have the adoption by month as well, showing how that adoption trends over time. And then you'll notice each of these sub-metrics each have their own gauge as well, along with some supplementary information under each one. So the downtime with reason percentage will also show you the total number of downtime hours that are missing a reason. The proper rates will tell you the number of hours that have run faster than the expected rate. This uptime with job, number of hours without a job running. The comments usage will tell you actually as well the number of comments that have been used. And then scrap usage as well will tell you the total scrap usage. Some of these other features will help you actually get an indication of how these metrics are trending over time and how the sub-metrics are driving the overall adoption metric. So this is your adoption breakdown for the last 6 months. And each one of these bars represents one of those sub-metrics. And the blue line in the background actually represents the trend of that overall adoption score over that 6-month period. The other thing you'll see is basically the same widget, but then focused around a 7-day horizon. So this is more of your near-term focus, which can be a leading indicator in terms of how your adoption is going to trend over time. This next one is one of my favorites. Essentially, this widget will help you get an indicator of which plants are driving the biggest adoption increase or decrease over time. So essentially, this orange bar here represents the current month adoption, and the blue bar will represent the previous month adoption. This red line represents the percentage change month over month. So it's sorted from high to low and by plants that are driving the highest level of adoption change. So this could be really where you tie that back into your daily management process and make sure that you're assigning some sense of accountability around who's responsible for optimizing these metrics. So here we can see, if we go all the way to the right, that the stamping plant had a 3.8% decrease in its overall adoption from last month to this month. So that can be something that we follow up with the plant manager for that plant and try to get them to understand why they're having a decrease in overall adoption. This next widget demonstrates how you can really roll up these adoption metrics to a much higher level and even analyze by division. So for example, here we're breaking this out. Like let's say you're a multi-plant organization or even a multi-division organization. You can use these metrics even at that level and roll up your overall adoption by division across multiple plants. And then these next few widgets demonstrate how you can actually slice that down to a much more granular level and see your overall adoption by shift or by machine. So all this kind of demonstrates just the general flexibility, both of the analytics portal, but of these metrics themselves, and how you can get some high-level indication of how you're trending, which sub-metrics are driving issues with your overall adoption score, which ones to focus on, and you'll have the ability to really slice down and go deeper into the reasons or drivers of that. Now, the other thing I mentioned is that just like anything in our analytics portal, you can really build your own dashboards from the ground up. So I'll show you an example of how you might do that. So I'm just going to go to add a new widget. I'll jump into the advanced configuration here and select a pivot table. And then I'll actually go and select the overall adoption score. So you'll notice that right at the top, we have a set of adoption formulas that are available in the data browser, and you can select from any of these when building your own dashboard. So I'll select the overall score. And then let's say I want to look at that by plant. So just like that, we now have the overall adoption by plant. Maybe you want to then trend this over time. So I can choose to add a column and say by month. And then now I've got the overall adoption by month in a pivot table. I mentioned that one of the other interesting metrics is the proper rates metric. And one of the ways that is actually great to be able to use that one is to analyze by job. So if I go here and select job name, I could then select the proper rates metric when this loads. And then now I actually have that indication down at the job level on which jobs are driving a poor result in the proper rates metric. So it's useful to be able to analyze this at a high level like a plant to see, on the whole, what is the overall level of health of our expected rates and how accurate are they? But then you can drill this down by the job level to really see, okay, which jobs are having the biggest issue with constantly exceeding the expected rate. And so this, 56% is telling you that that 56% of the time you're running within that rate, but the rest of the time you're exceeding it. So this job might be one that you want to look at, maybe follow up with the plant manager or process engineer to see whether or not this job's expected rate should be increased. So that just gives you a few examples of how you could build your own widgets and customize the dashboard further. Now, the last thing I'll show you, just because this is often a question we get, is what if one of these metrics is less important for your organization, or you're not using one of these core features? I mentioned that the job usage percentage is really focused around those operations that are focused on product changeovers. But maybe you have a machine that produces the same thing 24/7 and never changes. So maybe job usage is not as important for that type of operation. So one of the ways that you can really help to customize this more to your needs is you could go in to edit this overall adoption score, and you go in to edit the formula. I'll right click here and select use flattened formula. And now you can see how it's using those submetrics to create that overall average score. Each one of these metrics has a 1 times in front of it. And really what that means is that's giving it an equal weighting of 1 for each metric. But what you could actually choose to do is, let's say that you care most about the downtime with reason percentage. I could apply more weight to that and say 1.5 times. And maybe I don't use the job one as much, and I can reduce that weighting to 0.5 times. And then now you can see the overall metric has changed because I've altered that weighting. You could even choose to set the weighting to 0 or remove one of the components of that submetric. But it really just shows the overall flexibility of being able to customize even the formulas themselves to your needs.